The clock on the wall over there looks like it says 6:30, so I go ahead and call this meeting to order and ask that the roll be called, please. Present. We do have a quorum, just barely. Thank you.
What power we have.
Is there a motion for the approval of agenda and addenda?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Petrie, seconded by Mr. Harper. Any additions or corrections to be made? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Thank you, that passes. Move on then to approval of minutes for the ELEC committee meeting of October 6, 2016, as presented to us this evening. Moved by Ms. Petrie, seconded by Mr. Heiser. I know we haven't had a lot of time to look through them, but any additions, corrections?
We trust you.
Oh, Ms. Monty? Oh, yep, that you were. Thank you. And that might be Mr. Schrader or somebody, I assume. Yep, thank you. Any other additions or corrections? Mr. Weibel. Seeing no other additions or corrections, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Thank you, and that was to approve as amended, of course. Okay, we will then move on to public participation, which we have, and I know it's not quite right, but Gina Paglios, also. And if you could, please, turn the microphone on and state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Gina Peluso. I live in Urbana. I work in Champaign. And I came before this board, or this subcommittee of the Champaign County Board, just before you took your vote on whether or not you'd recommend for landscape burning, the ordinance that passed. And I spoke about an issue that I have because I work across the street from Champaign Township. And the air deflector burning thing that they have is about maybe 300 or so feet from the office that I work in. And I'm here again tonight because they started burning on Tuesday. You guys passed the ordinance, and now everybody that lives in that area can't burn because the landscape recycling, because the township has that burn pit that they are now supposed to bring their stuff to, which means that more people will bring their stuff there, which means I'll get to breathe in more of the smoke from that air deflector. They burnt on Tuesday, and I could see the smoke, and I drive in from Urbana down Springfield. I could see the smoke from Kernwood at the intersection of Kernwood and Springfield, which is a mile from the burn bin area. And as I got closer to work, and I work just west of 57 off of Springfield at Fieldstone, it was just blowing across Springfield and right into the parking lot of the facility that I work at. So I went into work and came out at lunch, and my car was completely covered with ash. It just blew across the street all morning, and I work at a company where we actually have to open and close dock doors throughout the day, and where people come into the front door to visit our company, and every time those doors open, all that smoke comes pouring in. Also, you know, with our high-efficiency furnaces, we're sucking in the outside air to circulate air through the building, and, you know, here we go again. So while I'm grateful that the board has tried to do something to mitigate the smoke problems that are occurring for people that live across the street from the township, I work in the township, they're burning in the township, and I have to work in this 8 hours a day every time they burn. It's less than something I'd like to do. Unfortunately, my company's not going to pick up and move away from this burn pit. And when the burn pit was installed, there was nothing there, or very little there. There was a lot of agriculture. There weren't businesses. There weren't 2 assisted living facilities. There wasn't a daycare. There weren't brand-new apartment buildings built to the south. I've been over there numerous times over the last couple of years and spoken with both the highway supervisor and the township supervisor, and I pretty much get the runaround every time I go over there. Well, it costs too much money to bring it to the landscape recycling center, or this is what happens when the city encroaches on the township, or how are you going to stop the people in California from burning? It's just, it's almost ludicrous to me that I am a citizen of this county, I pay taxes in this county, I work in this county, and I have to breathe this stuff in every time, that they burn. And I'm really here again tonight because it just happened again on Tuesday. I took some pictures of the ash all over my car, but I'm not as technically savvy as I should be. I tried to print them, and my printer ran out of ink. So it's something that I could certainly forward to the board, just to show you, what we're dealing with there as neighbors to the township. And I do intend to go to the township meeting on next Wednesday. I did speak with the Illinois EPA. They were less than helpful. So I'm really here to voice my concerns and to see if there's anything that the county could do to kind of lead me down a path to some kind of mitigation of this issue. So I thank you so much for your time in advance, and thanks.
Thank you. Seeing no other public to participate, we'll close that and move on to communications. Are there any communications? I guess the only thing, I didn't know it until getting Gary's email, just mentioned that John Jay had another back surgery. I don't know if Gary really wants to fill us in, but he's still in the hospital. I mean, if you want to, you could grab a microphone and fill us in. Okay, no problem. But for those that didn't know, I guess he had another back surgery. Hope it goes well for him. So that was, just thought I'd mention it because I didn't know about it until Gary sent an email out a little bit earlier this evening, late afternoon. Move on then to 7 for information only. We have October 15th, 2016. Countywide residential electronics collection results. Ms. Monty?
Thank you. A brief update and follow-up report about that has been provided in the packet, and to sum things up, we have the total number of participants listed here, 755, which is coming close to the maximum potential kind of capacity of such a 4-hour event, which we estimate at 1,100 or 1,150, maybe 1,200 if things are going super smooth. So that's a very good turnout, considering this was a pilot of use of the online registration system for the first 3 hours. The next thing I want to bring up is that it was successful in that regard. The 2 new measures did succeed in totally alleviating traffic congestion. So that was great. We received much positive feedback from all parties involved. I included information about the cost of the event, which came below the budgeted amount, and I included the total amount collected, which is a median kind of, or an average kind of collection rate, consisting mostly of televisions, of course. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions on it? Mr. Weibel?
Susan and I did participate in that, as you know, and I thought it went very fast. I was actually disappointed it was so quick. This point I had no time to talk to you hardly. If money was not a problem, and say you're going to plan another one of these, would you make any changes?
Yes, we would schedule more slots for persons to sign in online registration.
Like-
We've
like
already
10
bumped that up.
Like 10 minutes, or instead of 4 per hour, 6 per hour?
I believe the rate was 59 or 60 persons per 15-minute slot. We would bump that up to 75.
Okay, yeah,
Or
because
you
I,
just
you know,
bump
I
it up as much as we think we could.
I went through probably in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
All right. Like I said, I thought it went very well. Oh, one other question I have is, what is the maximum based on number of trucks there, or just, or what? How do you,
Well, one limitation is the hours available of the community service workers.
Okay.
I tried to see if they could be there longer hours, and that's just a no-go.
okay.
So that's the biggest
All right.
limitation.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Petrie?
What is the estimated months down the line before the next collection?
We have a tentative date already. I think it's in April. I think it's listed on this agreement draft that I've provided. Trying to remember exactly the date, I'm sorry. April 7th. No, it's Saturday, May 20th.
Any other questions or comments on this? Thank you for that, Susan. We'll move on then to B, progress towards a bill to adjust the Electronic Products Recycling and Reuse Act. Ms. Monty again.
In the notes provided this evening, for this evening's meeting, I provided 2 points: that the negotiations are continuing among key stakeholders to address this crisis, which is statewide and largely nationwide. And I gave the names of the 2 legislators who are heading up those negotiation efforts, which are expected to continue through the veto session. We don't expect a bill to be developed during this fall veto session, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. We do expect and hope that negotiations will continue and that an acceptable compromise will be reached, and that a bill could be developed and considered during the spring legislative session. Everybody is just stringing along and hoping that a solution is found, because this is not a sustainable solution that we have at present with the amount, the cost involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Any questions for her on this? Mr. Schrader?
I don't want to put you on the spot. Do we know what Speaker Madigan wants?
All I know is that there are lobbyists from the Illinois Manufacturing Association and the Illinois Retail Merchants Association sitting at the table, along with representatives from the Illinois EPA and Illinois Product Stewardship Council and certain other key electronics representatives from Will County, for example, and Lake County up in northern Illinois at the table.
But nobody from Cook County? Excuse me, I Freudian slip.
Yeah, there's calls to keep all interested apprised, all county representatives apprised, and the Cook County person is on those calls. So everybody's hoping for a positive outcome here.
Well, we seem to have plenty of hope, but no action. So, thanks.
Other questions or comments at this point in time? Seeing none, thank you again, Ms. Monty, for that, and we'll go to you again for C, update regarding planned 2016 Illinois EPA tire collection for abandoned tires but being held by local governments.
So this is another case of being strung along, and we had planned this type of tire collection with the Illinois EPA for March of this year, which it never happened, of course, with no budget and with some personnel staffing changes at Illinois EPA. So I am told that, yes, indeed, this will still happen in 2016, and I've requested a minimum of a 3-week head notice to again, contact all parties involved and have them bring their tires to the location that we agreed upon.
Thank you.
So weather could be a factor. I know the contractor for the Illinois EPA began at the southern tip of the state and is working its way north and encountering many more tires than they expected. So if you can envision that, that's just essentially what I'm being told. Thank you.
Mr. Schrader?
I experienced my combine on South Duncan, north of Monticello Road, where my combine operator accidentally got a tire in a combine. A combine will not chew up a tire. So obviously, not only are they hard to get rid of, people don't know what to do with them, but they like to throw them in fields too, along busy roads. I remember, maybe you remember too, when Illinois Power was allowed to take, and it happened here a few years ago at a substation, where they would take tires and they were allowed to grind them and use them for, I believe, they used them for, I think, in place of coal or something, for burning, to supplement, right? Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do you remember that, Susan? Do you know anything about that and why that got canceled or canned from, I don't know who stopped it, but I'm curious.
I'm not aware of that program, and I'm curious now and be happy to look into it and email ELUC members what I find. I'm not aware of that program. But
Because
if you say it happened, it happened.
Well, no. I appreciate your trust. But I remember, and it was impact pretty much, I think, any kind of tire. But I think it was also meant towards construction and farm too. And it was, I forget what station it was up here in Champaign, that they had room for tires to be dropped off and they'd take them. But I'm positive, John, maybe you remember that program. Pius might, but I remember they had that program, and IP, or Illinois Power, used them for combustion.
I recall
Bryce.
it was a Decatur power plant. It might have been at ADM.
Okay, I'm sorry, I might have
I
missed.
think it was
something.
ADM.
It was ADM used
But,
those?
yeah, I think it's like up to 10%, 90% coal or something like that. And I think they don't do it anymore, but I'm not sure why it stopped. But I'm not really sure.
I thank you for your correction. Thanks, John.
Anything else? Questions, comments on this? Seeing none, then we'll move on to Section 8, items to be recommended to the county board. We have A, zoning case 845-AM-16, request by Advantage Trucking LLC to amend the zoning map to change the zoning district designation from the R4 Multiple Family Residence Zoning District to the B4 General Business Zoning District for the establishment of a truck terminal and a contractor's facility with outdoor storage and operations and a self-storage warehouse without heat and utilities to individual units as a special use permit in related zoning case 846-S-16 on a 7.97 acre tract in Rantoul Township, formerly known as the Cherry Orchard Apartments, located at 1512 County Road 2700 North, Rantoul.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Schrader. Seconded by Mr. Harper. Questions, comments? Mr. Hall, do you have anything you want to say on this to start off?
I just wanted to point out to board members that you have an 11 by 17 legible site plan at your desk. Apologize for the quality of the copy and the agenda, but this is a site plan that was copied with about a 50% increase in darkness, so we just didn't get a good site plan in the beginning. But I'm sure you all recall, most of you recall the Cherry Orchard Apartments that are no longer on the landscape, and they were removed so that this development could happen. In the memo, we pointed out that this is a map amendment with some very specific conditions. The conditions are there because of the unusual situation with this map amendment. It was residential zoning being replaced with business zoning, and the zoning board wanted to make sure that whether this happens as a special use permit as it's proposed, or if it happens some other way, the separations and things that apparently helped with the concerns of neighbors would still be there no matter how this property actually does develop. And so that's why the map amendment has those special conditions. That's all I had, unless someone has questions.
Mr. Schrader and then Mr. Weibel.
Just a statement that I don't think it's in any way possible to return it back to ag property. I know as a R4 property, or zoning, but I don't think there's any way you can appropriately turn it back to ag. So for this to be, I'm going to imagine the density is probably going to be about the same. But to turn it in actually a good reuse for this property, I think, is the B4. And I always thought that the R4 was not a very good way of doing things out there, that far away from city limits. So I think it's a good reuse of the property, and I'll vote to support it.
Mr. Weibel.
Yeah, I have a number of questions, John. The earth berm, how tall is the earth berm?
I don't think that it's a uniform height, but along 45, I think it approaches 8 feet or so.
So it actually will be a visibility as well, a
Yes.
sound barrier?
I think it's principally a visibility barrier.
Okay. The properties that are shown on this detailed map, thank you for including that, like track 2, track 1, and that has document numbers on it, what are those tracks?
Well, Tract 2 and Tract 1 are the parcels that were the former Jones Building, which also was demolished. The document number 2002 R34192, that is an actual residence, and
A house of some sort?
yeah, with folks that have lived there, lived through all of the cherry orchard travails.
Okay. What are the likely, tract 1 and tract 2, are they likely, I mean, could they be houses also?
They could be one house.
One house
but
each
no more-
tract, or one house per both tracts?
One house on both. It's
Okay.
still zoned Ag 1, and it would
Okay.
take both of those together.
All right. The final question, I think, is this operation, is this a new operation, or is it somebody that has an operation already, they're moving into it?
The business itself, it's actually a couple of businesses that are part of one large organization. They are relatively new, but they have a facility here in Urbana, and I think they have a facility in Rantoul. Actually, they have 2 facilities here in Urbana. But this is not going to replace any existing facility. This is going to be another new facility for this relatively new business.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Mr. Harper and then Ms. Petrie.
Did they get all the septic problems that were out there fixed, I assume, or?
Actually, with this plan, they will need a new septic system for the shop,
Okay.
but that's a shop that has a much smaller loading than the 48 apartments that had no septic system. So this is actually an improvement in almost any way you can imagine.
Ms. Petrie.
I have a couple questions. I'm looking at this drawing. You got a topsoil materials storage area there, which will block the flow of water whenever there's rain, drainage. The berm does the same. Why isn't part of the berm design bioswale so the drainage can go into that and become useful? And what is going to be done with this blockage that will be in existence here? And I am assuming such a storage area, it'll constantly be there. And you've done a detention area, but why couldn't, instead of taking all the space up as a detention area, why couldn't it have been integrated into the berm and then that space is open?
Well, I think the business wanted to create visual screening. You know, they're sensitive to having a use like this right next to a major highway.
I'm not talking about taking the screening down, but as part of that berm, then this edge could all be bioswale. All through here, this would not have to be, this land did not have to be a detention area. And detention areas always have problems where the bioswales wouldn't, and then this presents a blockage here.
Well, depending on how much detention they would have to provide under our ordinance, it's very difficult to engineer a bioswale to achieve the control, the same kind of control that a detention basin can provide. The main benefit of a bioswale is to get that treatment by using the soil and the grass, well, whatever vegetation you're using. This is a dry detention basin, so it actually will provide, I mean, in my opinion, it will provide perhaps even better benefit than a bioswale. And, you know, this is what worked for the petitioner. We have not amended our ordinance to actually require anyone to do a bioswale. And if the county board wants to amend the ordinance to require that, it's going to have to be done, because so far, no one puts those in unless they're absolutely required.
Well, that might be something to consider down the line, because that's a much better design, and yeah, they can be designed to do the job. And there's only one row of evergreens along here. That's probably matching the ordinance, but that's another consideration. Blocking any housing from all of this with one row of evergreens, I really think that should be a double row.
I think it will be a double row.
Oh, it isn't portrayed that way?
No, it isn't.
Okay.
The special use permit, well, both, even, and the map amendment also specifies that it will be planted in staggered rows so that it achieves the screening that's required. Yeah, I didn't like the way it was shown on the site plan. I didn't like the way the buildings didn't show up on the site plan.
Okay, that's fine. And is this planting going to be all the same, or is there going to be some variability? So when and if a disease goes through, it doesn't wipe out the whole series of plantings?
It will probably be one species of evergreen. So if it comes down with a disease, it'll have to be replaced. Perhaps with a more resistant strain, but.
Other questions, comments? Go ahead, John.
I did want to add one thing. This rezoning is consistent with the Rantoul plan. We have not received any comments from the village. We've contacted them a couple of times. This week, when Susan contacted them, they reviewed their concerns at a staff level, which we then provided all these conditions, which to us seem to be responsive to those concerns. So at this point, I don't expect to receive any comments from the village, but I don't really know.
Well, how much time have you given them to get the comments in, so we know?
We've given them about 4 months so far. If we find out.
Did you give a drop dead date yet?
We told them when it goes to the county board. If we get something before then, we'll let the board know.
Okay, last call for questions. Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Thank you. Yes, Ms. Petrie?
I request that it's not on the consent agenda,
Okay,
please.
that's fine. We will keep that off the consent agenda. Move on then to B, proposed adjustment to final assurance for the California Ridge Farm special use permit case 696-S-11. Mr. Hall.
Yes, the board reviewed this item last month, and previous to that meeting, the wind farm operator, well, I guess I didn't know they were actively seeking a second opinion, but in retrospect, that's what they've done. So they had hoped to have that to us by the end of October, which would have been enough time to give you a handout tonight, but we actually have not received anything, so the board will have to, or the committee will have to, I think, just defer this until we get the second submittal.
Okay, thank you. And that was a second opinion on the assessment?
They were going to hire a second
Or
engineer
engineer?
to do their own analysis, and then, whichever one is most favorable, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, so, Ms. Petrie?
All right, I move that item 8B be deferred until such time that Mr. Hall has all of the appropriate paperwork to bring it forward to ELEC.
Moved by Ms. Petrie, seconded by Mr. Harper. Did you get that, Tammy, well enough? Or can look back on the tape or whatever, video? Okay, any questions, comments on the motion that's on the floor? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Okay, thank you. That is deferred, so that won't have to go to the county board at this point in time. Move on then to C. We have the 2017 Residential Electronics Collections Coordinator, Contractor, and Host Site Agreement Extension. And I guess first need a motion to approve it, and then moved by Ms. Petrie, seconded by Mr. Heiser, and Ms. Monty, do you want to? Thank you.
As you can see, this is a request for an extension, and the agreement has been drafted with 2 tentative dates for 2017. All parties involved, essentially the other local government, municipal representatives, were very pleased with the contractor. This is a contractor that we entered into a contract with this August, and we don't expect that we'd find a better price or quality of service if we went out to bid again. So we would like to request an extension. I'll note that the 2 events planned for 2017 will be limited to residents of municipalities that contribute their fair share of costs, and to residents of unincorporated areas within the county providing its fair share of costs per event, with the fair share costs calculated based on population. So the county portion of for the 2 events planned for 2017 would be paid from the county's 676 Solid Waste Management Fund. A second appeal letter is planned to the municipalities that have not yet responded to the earlier appeal letter sent in March. And in February of next year, I expect that we would have a separate intergovernmental cost share agreement drafted for consideration by the county board.
Thank you. Any questions on this? Ms. Petrie?
Susan, just would you mind clarifying for me, you haven't heard from the cities, yet you said by February 2017 you think you'll have a cost share plan. So could you clarify that so I know, should we be voting on this since you haven't heard back from the cities?
Well, what you're voting on tonight is an extension of the agreement, which simply lays out a schedule of costs, not actual amounts. Just like this rate will be charged, not a final amount. So I have heard back from about 9 municipalities, and I'm hoping to hear or to get positive feedback and results from contacts to the larger municipalities with a larger population base, and thereby decreasing the cost of participation for everyone involved. So I've heard back from relatively the smaller municipalities, 9 of them, and I have about 11 or so to contact to ask again and remind them that if they don't contribute, this event would not be open to their residents.
excuse me, Mr. Heiser, or Weibel first, I
I'm
guess.
not sure why we need to vote on this, Susan.
Well, it's a request to extend an agreement that the county board chair would
But
need to
But
sign.
again, the agreement's not the agreement's going to change.
Not the coordinator, host site, and contractor agreement. That's as
that-
it would be. What will change is the intergovernmental cost share agreement.
Oh, okay, all right, thank you.
Mr. Heiser?
Do you have data on the breakdown of where most of the individuals are coming from? Like, are most of them coming from proportionally from like Champaign, Urbana, or is it fairly spread out based off of population?
Yes, I do have data about who participated in the last event from the online registration data that was collected. I have address data, which hasn't been broken down into whether or not the address is in an incorporated area or an unincorporated area, and I need to do that yet. But roughly, it is apparently roughly proportionate to population basis.
Mr. Harper?
Are those dates set in stone?
We have a request out to Parkland College. I avoid two key events, the Illinois Marathon, the Christie Clinic Marathon, and I avoid an auto show that Parkland holds the first weekend in May. So they're not quite set in stone, but they are subject to feedback from Parkland yet.
My concern is, and not that a farmer ever complains, but May and October are kind of tough. I got some TVs I'd like to get rid of, but I'm busy. I'd like to see March or August sometime, but
Yeah, there would be another one in, well, yeah. Maybe there's something that we can work out. We, in the past, had done special collections for senior citizens and senior housing developments.
Mr. Weibel?
Well, I move to approve the contract coordinator and host site agreements for the 2017 residential electronics collections.
We already had, yeah. And Mr. Heiser seconded it, so we could go ahead and discuss it. Any further discussion? Ms. Petrie?
Oh, back to the dates that Mr. Harper raised. Is there a reason for May and October? I know you work around these show dates, but there are other months, so why do you target May and October?
It's the desire of the coordinators from the cities also.
Who haven't responded?
No, from the city of Champaign and city of Urbana, and primarily traditionally to hold an event around Earth Day in that month or in the spring. A lot of people call in and expect an event in the spring, or expectations have been developed about there being an event in the spring and in the fall. It's just traditionally the way since 2010 or since 2008. That's the way it's been. I mean, we did have quarterly events when we didn't have to pay for them. Remember back in 2010 and in 2011, there were
Right.
4 events a year.
Yeah, I remember.
I remember. But
Okay.
we were not paying for those
Okay, thanks.
as we are now.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Okay, thank you. That passes unanimously. Move on then to Section 9, monthly reports, which we have before us from September 2016. Any discussion on those to be had? Ms. Petrie?
I'm just proving that I've actually read this, that's why. No. But it will help me appreciate a great deal how much work and everything happens in your office. So if we go to page 31 to begin with, The total fee for the current month is basically $2,800. Do you have off the top of your head how much you've collected in fees so far this year? I don't mean, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, I was just ballpark.
Yeah, no, it's there on the second
Oh, did I miss
column. It's
it?
40,849.
Oh, okay, here it is, I got it, I missed that. And then if we go to page 34, and I'm just picking two here that there's a great differential. Inspections in 2015, you had almost 500 at the end of the year. So far, you're up at 334. Is just change in construction, or what's happening?
Let's see, it'd be 40 a month, 120. I would expect to have certainly well over 400 inspections this year by the end of the year. I don't know.
So at the end of the year, the differential won't look so.
Oh, no.
Okay, that's fine. And then first notice issues is 48, and then it's only 14 so far.
Yeah, and I don't know why that, it does look like we won't be near 48, and I can't recall why that discrepancy is going to be like that. I will try to have an explanation for that next month.
Okay, if they're just curiosity questions. And
Well,
then,
that one in particular is a very good question, so
Oh.
I'm sorry I can't answer it.
okay, and then, again, this is just curiosity, and there may come into play because of the kind of projects, but as I scan through the date applied for and date approved on some projects on page 35 as an example, the very first one, it was applied for in April of 16, but not approved till September of 16.
You'll see there's a zoning case that was related
And
to that.
that's what tied that up. Okay, and that's probably the case with a couple of others on the backside where there seemed to be a longer period of time than, say, a month. Things just get tied up with the type of project then. Is that a safe assumption?
Well, that's the only case on this list of permits that was related to, the only permit related to a zoning case.
Okay.
Most of the other permits were approved in a 2-week period.
No, the next one took over a month.
That also, okay, that has a zoning case that has yet to be heard.
Oh, okay, so it's just not noted?
Yes.
Okay, case to be heard.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, I appreciate that information.
Other discussion, Mr. Hurl?
I was just going to say, Ms. Petrie obviously read her agenda very closely.
If there's no other discussion, we will receive and place those on file. And move on then to other business. Is there any other business that anyone wants to bring up before this committee? See none of that. Chair's report, I have nothing. Designation of items to be placed on consent agenda. We have 8C, and other than that, is there a motion to adjourn? Moved by Ms. Petrie. We're adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.